We're coming to you from New York with an interview with the Rwandan Foreign Minister and later hip-hop mogul and activist Russell Simmons. Hello and welcome. The dark shadow of Rwanda's genocide lingers as fresh allegations of mass murder are levelled at the Rwandan government. The charges come in a draft UN report which is set to be released at the start of October. According to the leaked document, armed groups, including army soldiers, killed, quote, tens of thousands of Hutu refugees. The murders reportedly occurred after Rwanda's 1996 invasion of the Democratic Republic of Congo, which was then known as Zaire. President Paul Kagame has rejected the allegations, and his foreign minister wrote to the UN saying any action on the report would cause Rwanda to withdraw its troops from vital peacekeeping missions. So on today's show we ask, how should Rwanda's leadership address the claims of genocide by the army, and who should be held responsible? Remember, you can join our conversation with your questions and comments by sending an SMS or an email. Well, I spoke with Rwanda's Foreign Minister Louise Mushikiwabo earlier and asked her about the country's stellar economic success and whether or not that had been overshadowed by concerns that the recent presidential election wasn't free and fair.
Those questions, in my opinion, are questions that have been raised by people who are not good observers of Rwanda. And there is almost a trend to say that Rwanda is doing very well, but enough with the miracle story, and let's look for what's not working. But most reasonable people would say that Rwanda is making progress both economically and also in terms of democracy and openness and voice and so forth, which is one of the reasons why Rwanda has been receiving so much applause for good governance.
So, of course, Minister, it must be difficult then, to read the criticism such as, the Western media calling him a dictator. Foreign Policy magazine said he was like 21 on the list of the worst of the worst. How is he going to address those kind of things?
Of course, we like inaccuracies like those to be corrected, and that's what we've been doing. But I must say that inside Rwanda, we are much more comfortable than outside. We know that President Kagame is the man who has decentralized power right after the genocide. So you cannot be a dictator and want to take power to the people. We have a country that is making economic choices that are actually fostering free expression. So we're not as bothered by the claims of lack of democracy, no political space, as I think some outsiders, especially in the media, have been.
You can imagine a 93% victory, though. It sounds suspicious.
No, it's not. 93% is not suspicious for Rwanda at this particular time. And I think most people do not understand that voting for Rwandans today, given the recent history, given the disenfranchisement of Rwandans for so many years, is really almost an emotional act. People went out in large numbers. So if you compare with countries where everybody has been so cynical about politics, where people have taken leadership and advancement in politics for granted, of course it sounds suspicious, different, but for us it's not at all.
Another issue that's come up is the genocide ideology law. That still lingers, and your detractors certainly believe it's a way to silence the opposition, that it's a great way to stop debate on this, but also it gives you an opportunity to target those, including the media, who might raise the issue.
First, I think our laws to curb genocide ideology are no different from the laws that exist, especially in Europe, against anti-Semitism. Against denial of the Holocaust, against racism or any kind of bigotry. They're not different at all. We have looked at those laws, we have checked ours. So there is also this hype about this law. Secondly, we are not a government that wants to oppress its people. If this law, when it's practiced, proves to be problematic, we're ready to change it. We've been amending our laws for the last 17 years. But it also assumes that it's very ethnic. It's a very ethnic reading of the laws in Rwanda, because obviously using a genocide ideology law, since the genocide was against the Tutsi, would mean that you're trying to silence the Hutu. That's basically what it means. And that's not the case at all.
Of course, you've walked into something of a media storm here in New York with the United Nations General Assembly with the leaked UN report about Rwandan troops going into what was Zaire and the Democratic Republic of Congo now in search of those who were perpetrating the genocide. But of course, many of the civilians getting caught up, and they say there was genocide committed there as well now.
This report is a report that for Rwanda is nothing new. The claims in the report have been made by those who were either associated or apologizing for the genocide. We've heard these claims since 1994. No sooner had the genocide ended that some people wanted to sort of have both sides, this idea of one side and the other, and it's just a manifestation of this this frame of mind. But this report is very deeply flawed, and I think if these claims come from NGOs, human rights organizations, we've been dealing with these issues for the last 17 years, but it's very difficult for us, the countries cited in the report, and Rwanda in particular, to take that kind of irresponsibility from the United Nations. And frankly, for Rwanda, we think the UN should be ashamed of itself.
Well, that's what I wonder. You know, if it's the United Nations, why would it be, as you were saying, it's those who have something to gain from this? What would the United Nations have to gain from this?
The United Nations is on the record for miserably failing Rwanda during the genocide. The Secretary General of the UN back in 1994 was head of the peacekeeping operations and was giving orders to the first commander, UN first commander in Rwanda then, not to act. So really, I think if I were the UN, I would try to stay away from anything Rwanda and genocide. So this report is really a way of diluting responsibilities. The report itself, in its own words, claims not to be accurate. So why this report, and why is it at this particular time?
Well, you've threatened to withdraw Rwandan troops from peacekeeping missions of the UN if it does go ahead. Is that something you plan to go ahead with?
I wouldn't use the word threat because we don't see our withdrawal from UN peacekeeping operations as a threat. For us, it's a very genuine, well thought out gesture of protest for the way Rwanda is being mistreated by the United Nations in particular after it failed to stop the genocide. We've thought about it very carefully. And we also don't think it makes sense to, on one hand, accuse an army of committing atrocities and wanting that same army, which the UN itself describes as most ethical, most professional, you know, to guard peace and be an army of killers. It doesn't make any sense.
Now, it was obviously taken seriously enough by the UN Secretary General, Ban Ki-moon, for him to go and visit President Kagame. What came out of that meeting?
It was very good for us in Rwanda to see that Secretary General Ban Ki-moon took this issue with the report very seriously, including our protest on the leakage of the report. But we want action to be taken on this report in terms of bringing out an accurate assessment of what happened in the region and in the DRC at that time. And certainly we don't want any actor to be excluded, including UN forces. So we have some serious issues with this report. We have discussed those issues with the Secretary General. He was very understanding. Him coming to Rwanda was a good opportunity for us to really make him understand how serious this issue is.
Now, even when all this is dealt with, so to speak, and is out of the media, Rwanda still has the issue of addressing accusations that the population is still divided, that Hutus don't have the same kind of voice that they should. What steps is the president taking to make sure that there is some inclusion in the society?
I think that is preposterous. Rwanda is a country that has shown exemplary behavior in avoiding revenge after the genocide. You can imagine what it is like for a young soldier holding a gun to come to his village and find his entire family massacred and do nothing about it. So I think Rwanda should really get more credit than it's been getting for how the leadership, the army, the entire nation behaved in the aftermath of the genocide. So the idea that the country is divided is just not true. We have a very inclusive political system. We have a non-discriminatory education system. These are just ideas that people have failed to get rid of, even as we Rwandans want to view ourselves as one people, look at what we have in common rather than what opposes us. The world has refused to look at us in that sense.
That was Rwanda's Foreign Minister Louise Mushikiwabo talking to me then. We have to take a short break now. Next, I'll speak to hip-hop pioneer and native New Yorker Russell Simmons about the Ground Zero Islamic Center controversy. We'll be right back. Welcome back. With me now is hip-hop mogul Russell Simmons, who, beyond co-founding the influential Def Jam Records, is a native New Yorker and chairman of the Foundation for Ethnic Understanding, which focuses on interfaith relations. Glad to have you on the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Of course, you know what's been happening with the Ground Zero mosque situation. You've been one of the outspoken voices and very much giving support for it. I know you live across the street from Ground Zero, the Ground Zero side, I should say, and you've been very involved in interfaith relations through your foundation and so on. But what made you want to really speak out and go very public with this?
Oh, it's my responsibility. I mean, I feel it's my responsibility, not only as the chairman of the Foundation for Ethnic Understanding. Myself, along with Rabbi Sanaya, we've worked on interfaith dialogue, and this falls right under the heading of, promoting tolerance. And the Imam, Raul, has been a great supporter of our work, and it's just, that's our job, So I've been as vocal as possible, and I think that we need more Americans to stand up. I sometimes saddened by the lack of good people standing up.
You put the Coexist banner out on the window there in your apartment for everyone to see. What was the feedback on that?
Well, it was pretty good, actually. Last time I put a no war poster. I had the same kind of protest that said no war and pictures of Dr. King and Gandhi and stuff. And I didn't get such a good response on that one. But later on, I guess they looked back and thought it was silly, the wars that we promoted. But this one has been very good. I mean, what can anyone say? It's like there's the images of all the great religions, symbols, and the idea of coexisting is in the basic mantra for all religious people. And so it was a pretty good response.
How do you respond to those who support the idea of freedom of expression, which is, of course, so important, and yet they say that it's a very sensitive situation? A couple of blocks away wouldn't be a big deal. It should move.
Their sensitivity, although I feel for them, I couldn't support it. The idea that there's misguided anger in our community, in the Americans' hearts, has to be corrected. Sensitive doesn't mean anything. There were kids sensitive in those schools, but the National Guard pushed black people in them. When I moved into my community in Queens, there were people, not African-American people, who were sensitive to me moving in. But we didn't care. I mean, they couldn't move me. America's job is to protect those, we have those rights. It's very disheartening, this idea, adhering to this sensitivity. it's insensitive to the Muslim community, obviously, but it's the sensitivity that they're adhering to. That a government official would have an opinion that they should move. It's a sad sad statement about some Americans. You know, so there's a lot of Islamophobia in this country, and it's an area that we have to work on. And that's, you know, that's my job, I guess. You know.
Well, I'm going to put an email question to you, if I could, that a viewer sent in from Canada. Khalid Al-Amoudi wrote in saying, on one hand, this mosque controversy has helped bring some religious leaders closer, but we've also seen a greater sense of hostility towards Islam and Muslims. From the general feel you get, the people you meet, the people you talk to, which way do you feel it's going? Is this creating greater awareness and maybe better understanding, or is it bigger divisions?
Well, it could have been. You know, this is a pocket of this is a phobia in America. It's been under, you know, hasn't been really broadcast. You know, it may be that this dialogue will create people to look inside and find greater, you know, tolerance, you know, and find that they have been harboring some kind of a phobia. You know, we hope that that's the result of this. I mean, but there is some sense that the trend is going towards intolerance, not only towards the Muslim community, but towards each other in general. You know, poverty is a great, and I'm just talking about in general in terms of our relations with each other in this country. You know, it's a great divider, and it's a great way it's a great place where hate can develop. And as Americans are slipping into poverty, there's more hate, not only towards Muslims, but towards each other Americans as well. I say each other, all Americans have, you know, this disconnect because of it. So there's that potential that we are going in a bad direction, and that, you know, it's something we have to work on.
And of course, there are those who say that, you know, building this center in that location is a sign of Muslim victory or, you know, triumph over after 9/11. And
that's a silly idea, but I mean, you have to be sensitive to how you express this to these people. You have to love these people in a way, and say things in a way that they can digest it. But I dismiss that totally. It's a statement for moderate Muslims, and I don't like to use the word moderate Muslims because all the Muslims I know are moderate. Right. You know, especially American Muslims. You know, American Muslims, especially African American Muslims. All of the millions of African American Muslims. It's kind of an alternative religion for them. I always love people who find alternative religions because then they must have loved it to go into it, and then they might actually live up to the principles, as opposed to sometimes, and that's a personal thing. I find when people are born into religions, they may be just stuck there and kind of accept the principles, but right. figure out ways around it. But when people go find a religion, like all the Americans who went and found Islam, they're all so tolerant, so loving. And that to me is, you know, is inspiring, you know. So I'm sorry that people are where they are.
What do you think of the timing of this? Of course, that project, you know, for that center was going on 4 years before, and no one said anything about it. Of course, the midterm elections are coming up. Do you think there's any kind of political wrangling going on?
There certainly is a lot of political wrangling. You know, in a way, you know, the politics in America, there's such a backlash, I would say, against President Obama being elected. Because without, you know, maybe the black guy will give us a miracle. So some miracles don't happen, you know, not in politics, certainly. Things take time. And I think that there's a little bit of a backlash. And I feel like there's an opportunity for us to take this Tea Party, this energy that is very divisive, and maybe it's so divisive it divides the parties that more often promote hate. Right. And maybe and I think the Democrats, given their agenda, I like it better personally than what the Republicans are proposing. And certainly when it comes to bringing people together, I think there's an opportunity now that there's some people who are radical Christians maybe, right? And there's many of them, and those people are getting too much control, and so much so that the moderate Americans will not support that effort, will not support that kind of hate and divisive politics. And so there's a great opportunity now. So let's just watch and see.
Of course, you have a huge amount of influence in the sort of youth culture and sort of general culture of the United States through your music influences and your activities. What sort of steps are you taking to try to get people to think a little more clearly on this?
Well, you know, by example, to do things, you know, whether it's some of the television work that we're doing or the music work or the internet company, globalgrind.com, we put out ideas that we think promote tolerance, and we try to operate from a place of love rather than so much fear, which is a great place where a lot of people are operating from. I mean, in America, it's becoming, you know, part of this trend towards intolerance, I think, is fear. You know, that what separates people is fear. So we try to give people a little more freedom. And I think that's what I'm doing in every area, you know, even in this dialogue today, reminding people, you know, that our country is built on the First Amendment, which is religious freedom. Even before, you know, freedom of speech is religious freedom. That's why we built this country. And we have to support it. And if people are sensitive and if you're thinking about it that way, then you have to remember that, you know, what is honest and real about our Constitution that we believe in, we have to stand by that. We can't deviate from that. And I think that, you know, a lot of Americans can. And, you know, when it comes down to black or white, you know, I think they're going to have to vote, you know, to support religious freedom. They have to, you know, really go along with their charter.
Interesting you raised that issue, because I want to put an email question from Somalia that we got from Mogadishu. And Mo Hassan wrote in saying, the US says they are not at war with Islam, yet the American public opposes building a mosque in Lower Manhattan. All this talk of tolerance and acceptance is just lip service. Now, is it fair for, you know, someone like Mo is saying here, the American public? I mean, the American public is all being...
It's a sad state. You know, the media has, first of all, as you suggested, there was lots of, everyone was okay. I live across the street from the hole in the ground. Directly across the street, out my window is the hole in the ground. And everybody in this community, the small community, was okay with the mosque or the community center or the interfaith prayer center, whatever we name it. They were all in favor of it. The media twisted it just a bit. It's been politicized just a bit. And it's created a kind of another attitude. So I think we have to be, you know, careful how we, you know, Americans are not burning Qurans. One nut is. I say nut, he's a little nutty compared to the mindset of most Americans, right? This preacher and his 50 people are not news. News are the 16,000 Africans who died for lack of clean water yesterday. News are the suffering people in India who need support, and even in our poverty in America, where kids are killing themselves, that should be news. News is not some nut burning a Quran. And if that kind of thing comes up, or if we, you know, we create that through the media, then we put the burden. It's the same misguided anger that you get when you have Americans blaming Islam for the actions of a few. Right. So it's misguided, and I wouldn't blame all Americans. I would say the idea that there's talk of tolerance and talk of inclusiveness is a plus. You know, I mean, lip service is part of a prayer. It's part of a action. You know, it's okay. So the talk of it is good. Lifting the voice is better, you know. So that's our job, not to...
Well, Russell Simmons, I wish you a lot of luck with your work. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure.
Pleasure, sir. And thank you for being with us. Now, remember, you can follow our show on Facebook, where we've been giving you a candid, behind-the-scenes look at our week in New York. Be sure to check it out and also post your questions and comments for our guests. On the next show, the battle against HIV/AIDS. Has the world failed in its pledge to stem the tide of this deadly disease? We talk with the head of UNAIDS, Michel Sidibe, about why some countries are failing to put their money where their mouth is when it comes to HIV/AIDS prevention. Be sure to tune in for that. From me and the teams in New York and DC, we'll see you next time.